Host, do you regret marrying your husband? The studio fell silent. The host, a well-known liberal commentator, leaned forward, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He had done this before, lured guests in, made them comfortable, then blindsided them with a question designed to put them on the defensive. But Usha Vance was no ordinary guest. Dressed in a sharp navy blazer, she exuded quiet confidence. A Yale-educated attorney, she had faced far tougher challenges than a televised debate. Yet tonight felt different. The discussion had been moving predictably. Politics, her legal career, and of course her husband, Senator J.D. Vance. Then came the curveball. The host rested his elbows on the desk, his tone casual but laced with intent. Do you ever regret marrying J.D. Vance? The air shifted. A few audience members gasped. The tension in the room thickened. The host had carefully crafted his question, not out of curiosity, but as a trap. A slight stumble, a nervous laugh, even the faintest hesitation would be enough to make headlines. He had seen other politicians' spouses falter under similar pressure. But Usha didn't fumble. She didn't rush to defend herself. Instead, she let the silence stretch, her expression unreadable. The host, expecting an immediate reaction, felt the weight of the pause. His smirk wavered. Then, finally, Usha smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that caught him off guard. Regret, she repeated, as if the question were absurd. Her voice was steady, unshaken. The host blinked, his fingers tapping lightly against his notes. This wasn't the response he had anticipated. Usha shifted slightly in her seat, crossing one leg over the other. You know, she said, tilting her head. I always find these kinds of questions fascinating. She wasn't just answering. She was reclaiming control. I could sit here and list all the reasons why I love and respect my husband, the values we share, the way he has supported me, the life we've built together. She paused, her gaze unwavering. But somehow I don't think that's the answer you're looking for, is it? The host's expression flickered, just for a second. But the camera caught it. That moment of uncertainty. He cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. Well, I was just curious. Were you? Usha interjected, her smile never fading. And just like that, the conversation had shifted. The host had set the trap. But it was Usha Vance who walked away victorious. She cut in smoothly, her expression still composed. Forgive me if I'm wrong, she said, her voice calm, yet unmistakably firm. But I don't think I've ever seen a male politician's wife ask this question on live television. A murmur rippled through the audience. A few heads turned, eyebrows raised. The host blinked. Usha didn't let him finish. It's interesting, isn't it? She continued, her tone light, almost conversational. Women in politics, whether we're the ones in office or the ones married to the men who are so often asked if we regret our choices. But I can't recall a single instance of a male guest sitting here and being asked if he regrets standing by his wife. Now the audience was fully engaged. The host gave a tight smile, shifting in his seat, trying to regain his footing. Well, I just thought, given some of his positions. Usha tilted her head slightly. Ah, so that's what this is about. And, just like that, she flipped it. The host realized too late that he had lost control of the moment. But Usha was just getting started. He cleared his throat, shuffling the papers in front of him, a telltale sign of discomfort. He wasn't used to being on the defensive. Usha, on the other hand, looked completely at ease. No notes, no teleprompter, just her confidence and an ironclad grasp of the moment. She leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with him. Let me ask you something, she said, her voice calm but pointed. Would you ever ask Michelle Obama if she regrets marrying Barack? Silence. The host opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The audience reacted instantly. Quiet chuckles, murmurs of recognition. They knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just answering. She was exposing the bias in the question itself. The host finally found his voice, though it lacked the authority he had started with. Well, I mean, that's not really the same, isn't it? Usha interjected smoothly, raising an eyebrow. Because when a woman stands by a man whose views don't perfectly align with the media's agenda, suddenly it's a questionable decision. But when it's the other way around, it's a love story. Interesting. The audience was locked in now, watching the host struggle to regain control. He forced a chuckle, trying to brush it off. I was just giving you the opportunity to speak for yourself, that's all. Usha didn't blink. And I appreciate that, she said, her tone even, unwavering. But I also recognize when I'm being handed a loaded question. More murmurs. The host's smirk was long gone. Usha shifted in her seat, her body language radiating confidence while he was the one scrambling. I don't regret marrying my husband, she said, her voice steady. I'm proud of the life we've built. I'm proud of his work, just as he's proud of mine. She let that sink in before continuing. And if the question is whether I stand by him despite political disagreements, then let me turn that back on you. She paused just long enough. Do you stand by every political stance your spouse has ever taken? The host inhaled sharply. The shift in his demeanor was subtle, but Usha caught it. I mean, that's different, he said quickly. Usha tilted her head slightly. How so? Silence. The audience was watching, waiting. The host glanced toward his producers, as if searching for an escape route. But it was too late. The moment belonged to Usha Vance, and everyone in that studio knew it. But what happened next was even worse for the host. He let out a short breath, forcing a chuckle. Well, I wasn't trying to imply. Usha didn't let him finish. Oh, I know exactly what you were trying to do, she said, her voice still composed, but with just enough bite to make him shift in his chair. It just didn't work. The audience erupted. Laughter scattered applause. Someone even whistled. The host, who had started this interview in full control, was now visibly struggling. He glanced down at his notes, flipping through them as if searching for a way out. But it was too late. The moment had already slipped through his fingers. Usha leaned back, waiting. She wasn't going to make this easy for him. Finally, he looked up, forcing another smile. I just think that when someone's spouse has strong political views, people are naturally curious about how that affects the marriage. Usha nodded slowly. Oh, absolutely, she said. Just like people were curious about Bill and Hillary Clinton's marriage when they disagreed on certain policies, or when John Kerry's wife spoke out against his campaign positions. Oh, wait. She trailed off, feigning thought. Nobody actually asked them those questions, did they? More laughter. The host's smile was growing tighter by the second. Look, he said, his voice betraying his frustration. I was just asking a question, and I answered it, Usha replied smoothly. The problem is you didn't get the answer you were hoping for. A collective ooh spread through the audience. A camera operator was caught suppressing a grin. The energy in the studio had shifted entirely. The host knew it. He could try to move on, but it wouldn't matter. The damage was already done, and the audience could feel it. This was the kind of moment that would be replayed, clipped, and shared across social media. And that's exactly what happened. By the time the interview aired in full, clips of Usha's response were already going viral. Twitter exploded with reactions, some cheering her for dismantling the host's narrative, others scrambling to spin the moment in his favor. Memes flooded the internet. Screenshots of the host's stunned expression were plastered across political commentary pages. Even media analysts who usually opposed Usha's politics admitted she had handled the moment with sharpness and grace. Sensing the momentum, the network itself clipped the exchange and uploaded it to YouTube, though they carefully edited it to frame it as a fiery debate rather than a total takedown. But it didn't matter. People had already seen the raw footage, and the consensus was overwhelming. Usha Vance had just delivered one of the most devastatingly effective responses in recent political media history. And the host? Well, his name was trending too. Just not for the reasons he had hoped. But the ripple effect didn't stop at the interview. The fallout was immediate. News outlets scrambled to react, each spinning the moment their own way. Conservative media hailed Usha's response as a masterclass in grace under pressure, calling it proof of the media's double standards. Liberal commentators, meanwhile, tried to downplay the exchange, some claiming the host's question had been misinterpreted, others insisting Usha had deflected rather than answered. But none of that mattered. The video was everywhere. Clips of her response flooded Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok. Someone set her most biting remarks to dramatic music, overlaying slow-motion shots of the host blinking in stunned silence. And just like that, the moment became more than an interview. It became a statement. And it wasn't going away anytime soon. Within 24 hours, the clip had racked up millions of views. Political figures couldn't resist weighing in. Some Democrats avoided the subject altogether, unwilling to touch what was now a full-blown PR disaster for the host. Others scrambled for damage control, dismissing the backlash as manufactured outrage. Republicans, on the other hand, wasted no time turning the moment into a rallying cry. Prominent senators, commentators, and influencers praised Usha's response as the perfect rebuttal to media bias. But the most telling reaction came from ordinary viewers. The comment sections of news sites and social media platforms were flooded, not just by political voices but by everyday people who had felt the bias firsthand. Women, especially, connected with Usha's point. This isn't about politics. I've had people question my choices like this just because I don't fit their expectations. Good for her for standing her ground. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get defensive. She just completely dismantled the guy. That's how it's done. I don't care what side you're on. If you're asking a woman if she regrets her marriage just because her husband has his own opinions, that's condescending. Period. And then came the think pieces. Journalists and opinion writers rushed to analyze why the clip resonated so deeply. Some argued it was about marital loyalty in an era of political division. Others saw it as a larger statement on how women are treated in media. A few tried to spin it as Usha using her legal training to manipulate the conversation. But that argument didn't gain traction, because the truth was simple. She had been handed a loaded question and had handled it flawlessly. Meanwhile, the network found itself in an awkward position. What was supposed to be a routine interview with a political spouse had turned into a viral moment spiraling out of their control. A half-hearted attempt at damage control. The host released a statement insisting the question was fair and had been misunderstood, but no one was buying it. Because Usha hadn't just survived the interview. She had flipped the script entirely, and the conversation wasn't going away anytime soon. But beyond the headlines, beyond the viral clips and political spin, there was a deeper lesson in all of this, one that mattered far more than the politics of the moment. As the media storm raged on, Usha Vance remained exactly as she had been in that interview, calm, unbothered, resolute. She didn't chase the headlines. She didn't gloat. She didn't engage in online debates. She had said what she needed to say, and that was enough. But the impact of that moment went far beyond a viral clip. It touched something deeper, something more human than politics. People saw themselves in that exchange, because this wasn't just about Usha Vance and the host. It was about how people, especially women, are constantly put in positions where they have to justify their choices. A woman builds a successful career. She's asked if she regrets sacrificing family time. A woman chooses to stay home with her kids. She's asked if she regrets not having a career. A woman marries a man with strong opinions. Suddenly, her entire marriage is up for debate. The double standard was impossible to ignore, and Usha hadn't just answered the question, she had exposed it for what it really was. That was the real reason the clip spread so fast, not because it was scandalous, not because it was politically charged, but because it was a moment of clarity. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful response isn't shouting or arguing. It's simply refusing to play the game. Usha took control of the conversation not by attacking, but by making people think, and that's a skill more powerful than any political talking point. In the end, the host's attempt to put her on the spot backfired spectacularly. But this was never about him. It was about how we treat people. When we think they owe us an explanation for their choices, and maybe, just maybe, it was a wake-up call. Because if there's one lesson to take from this, it's this. Confidence isn't about having the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to speak and when to let the truth speak for itself. Usha Vance didn't just win an interview. She shifted the conversation. And that's something no headline can take away. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking stories like this one. And tell me, have you ever been put in a situation where you had to defend your personal choices? Drop a comment below.